welcome. This is February 22nd, 2025. Our guest today is Karen Holton. She's an ET and angelic experiencer, author, exopolitical ambassador, holistic coach, and transdimensional channel. Karen's professional experience includes shamanic guidance, awakening and ascension counseling, as well as public discourses. She's got a YouTube channel, a lot of other links I'll put below this video. And today we'll talk about her new book. She's the author of Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon. So welcome, Karen. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you to all the lovely people that showed up for the meetup. This is really exciting. I'm so happy to talk about my book and give you the opportunity to to ask me questions because, the book is quite, even though it's not a huge book, it's quite extensive. I talk in the beginning about who I'm affiliated with and who I'm not. I talk about my history, the paranormal experiences I had within my life, then starting from chapter 3 to chapter 9 is all about my ET experiences, which were extensive. And I want everybody to know that I don't expect you to believe me. That is not the point of me being here or even for writing the book. It's to add another piece to the puzzle. So I think that those of us that have experiences, there's a lot of them that follow kind of a common narrative. And my experiences were very different than the common narrative. And it's just interesting how it's turned out that I've determined that my experiences are transdimensional, which has to do with the name of my book. And now all of a sudden, it's coming out that these experiences generally are transdimensional. So it just turned out to be perfect timing for my book. And I think the other thing I want to stress before I talk about it is this isn't about, hey, look at me, I was with ETs and we did all these wonderful things. That's not my point. My point is to take a look at the material and let it stimulate your own leveling up as human beings, because I think that that's what has to happen before we can have more ET contact. And the other part of this is I believe many of us are having transdimensional experiences, but we've been taught, oh, that's science fiction. Oh, that's your imagination. Oh, that's mental illness. Oh, you're imagining it. And when we have these experiences, we tend to brush them off. And so, what I'm hoping, the purpose of my book is that other people will read it and go, oh my God, I had similar as that part or similar to that part. And I also teach you in the book on how to listen for contact because we're not trained. Let's face it, we've grown up in what I call a construct, a man organized political, social, economic, religious construct that has programmed us to think a certain way. And so we don't have the concepts or even the language to talk about these things. So all of us experiencers are doing the best we can to take these circumstances and these adventures that we don't have concepts for, we don't have language for, and we're filtering it through our own realm of experience. And then we're trying to share that with other people. And that is why I believe that every ET experiencer, their experience has validity. I would never say this person's wrong or that person's not telling the truth, because I think it's all pieces of the puzzle. And now I'm adding a new piece to the puzzle. And so it's up to you to take these pieces and weigh them out. What intuitively feels right to you? What do you want to disregard? That's totally okay too. But I'm really hoping that this inspires those of us who want to be in a more healthful environment, society, world, and then make contact with peaceful and other peaceful and loving beings. And then our evolution or our development will happen so fast. And the world that stresses us out now will be gone forever. We're going to create a new reality. And that is the purpose of my book. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it before I open things up to questions. And so, first of all, I want you to know that I am not part of any politic or religion or philosophical belief system. I am what I would consider a tributarian. I draw from the waters of all belief systems and teachings, and I seek out the common elements that resonate true for me, and that's what I incorporate into my reality. And so I'm not a learned scholar. I'm not a spiritual teacher. I'm not a starseed. I'm just a woman that's had some amazing experiences, not all good, in my life. And and then I had this amazing, actually, I had an angelic experience before I had extraterrestrial contact. The other thing I want to say is that a lot of my paranormal experiences happened to me kind of as a result of some very horrible experiences, some huge levels of suffering that nobody should have to go through. And I talk a little bit about it in the beginning, part one of my book, but I don't get into it in too much detail because I don't want to traumatize other people. I basically want to say if other people have had trauma, and probably everybody in this meetup has had some stuff happen that is caused unbearable pain, but that actually, in my opinion, opens us up. It's like when a door closes, a window opens, and it opens us up to these beautiful relationships with beings that are seen and unseen, who come to give us the strength and the nurturing and the healing and the direction we need to carry on. And one person, I mean, there are many ET experiencers, but one person who I have special place in my heart for is Chris Bledsoe. His experiences came from deep periods of suffering as well. And he was taught, as was I, that they are here to help us, not hurt us. And so there is a narrative of fear out there. And if we choose not to tap into that, we can tap into the much more productive love, what I call the love harmonic, where we are then at a more similar frequency as these loving paranormal beings, and then we can take advantage of their assistance. So although I don't think that I wish suffering didn't happen, but at the same time, surprise, surprise, it seems to open us up to these amazing gifts. So I just want to mention that. And so I started having some paranormal experiences when I was a child. And but I kept being told one of two things. One was, don't talk about that. People are going to think you're crazy. And I think the reason we haven't had a lot more historical accounts of paranormal and extraterrestrial contact is because they introduced insane asylums and frontal lobotomies and horrible, horrible things that they did to people if they shared that kind of information. So that shut that down completely for hundreds, actually, possibly thousands of years. And that's why we don't have all these books written about all these amazing experiences. And then in the late 19 or mid 1980s, they replaced the physical surgeries of lobotomization with pharmaceuticals. And I'm not telling you you should or shouldn't take pharmaceuticals. That's not my point. But my point is that for me, I fell into that for a while, trying to shut off these experiences. I didn't understand that they were okay and that I was not crazy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're also taught that it's evil. So I kept going to Christian religions and tried to find out answers. Why am I having these experiences? And then I was taught, oh, don't do that. You're opening yourself up to the devil. You're opening yourself up to dark spirits. You're opening yourself up to a woe of trouble. And, don't do that. You got to stick to your Bible and stick to your church. And ironically, you go to the church across the street and they teach different things, but they all claim to have a monopoly on religion. Now, again, just like I'm not bashing the pharmaceutical industry or the medical advice, I'm not bashing religion. If it works for you and it does it for you, I'm so happy. Like I would never try to direct other people whether you should or shouldn't get involved in those things. But I myself found that when I stepped outside of the medical industry and outside of organized religion, then I was able to start judging for myself what was healthful, what was true, what was helpful, and helped to elevate me so that I had a happier life. Bottom line, a happier life, right? So I'll just tell you quickly, I was going through a very, very rough time. I talk about it extensively in my book. And I was actually going to kill myself. Sorry if this is triggering anybody out there, but this stuff happens. And I actually had angelic intervention. And I was told that if I wanted to stay on planet, that they would give me a helper. And I said, well, what kind of helper? Like, I mean, who has visits from angels? I mean, I'd never heard of this before. And I was like shocked. And, I couldn't even think straight. But the next day, I decided, yeah, I was going to stay. I was 41 years old when this happened. And I decided to renew for another 41 years. So I'm convinced I'll live to be at least 82. So anyway, I thought about what kind of gift do I want? And then I realized I went through all kinds of crazy things, money, fame, fortune, all those things. And I knew that wasn't what I needed. And I knew this was really important and might never be offered to me again. So I asked for wisdom because I knew that if I had wisdom, I could make good decisions in my life and I could be a blessing on this planet and I could actually start living instead of just dealing with the results of trauma. I mean, that's no way to live. That's just, let's face it, that's no way to live. So I renewed, and there's more to the story, but I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that. But I believe that set me up for my extraterrestrial contact that happened a number of years later. So I went through trials and tribulations, but I learned, oh my goodness, it was like my eyes were opened and seeing things quite differently than the way I saw things before. So I was able to learn at a very accelerated, rate. And then I had, again, I get into it a little bit in the book. I had a very badly botched surgery and I lost everything. And people stayed away from me because I couldn't communicate properly anymore. And they thought I was on drugs or they made up all kinds of stories. And I lost everything. I couldn't work. And my children had just left home. So I was going through kind of an empty nest crisis period in my life as well. And right out of the blue, I just started having these adventures. Now, my adventures are transdimensional. What that means is at no time did a spaceship show up and levitate me or beam me up to the spaceship and carry me off somewhere. That never happened for me. It didn't happen that way. What happened for me is I'd get into my jammies and I'd get into bed at night and kiss my kitty cat goodnight. And I all of a sudden, boom, I'd be in this different reality. And there's a time dilation. So I'd be experiencing days, weeks, even months of reality, then wake up. And it was the next morning, and I was back in my bed as though I hadn't left. So at first, I thought I was dreaming. But as this continued night after night for 3 months of our Earth time, every single night, I'd go to bed at night, I'd quickly fell asleep instantly, and I picked up where I had left off in the morning when I had woke up. It was incredible. And pretty soon I realized I wasn't dreaming because when I dream, my dreams don't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of symbolism. They're very disjointed. They're confusing. Sometimes I can't make heads nor tails out of them. I might have 2 or 3 different dreams in one night, or I might not dream at all. This was completely different. I was absolutely someplace else having experiences. And I believe the reason that I was allowed to remember is because I was meant to write the book, because I believe it will be a great inspiration to a great many people. And that's one thing. There's no short supply. We need inspiration. We all can use inspiration, right? So, so I started basically in my sleep being transported to what I call the big ship. Now, a lot of this I'm expressing in my own words. And because I don't have concepts, I don't have language for it, I'm making language up as I go to try to bring you into my experience so you can get an idea of what it was like, what it felt like, and what I learned. So, this big ship, as I call it, is what we would consider a city ship. They're massive. Some of them are as big as our planet, some of them are even bigger. And the one that I was on held millions of beings. And it doesn't sit anywhere. People say, well, where's the big ship? Is it in our solar system? Is it in our galaxy? Like, where is it? And it's not anywhere and it's everywhere because it's in transdimensional space. So I want you to use your imaginations and join me in thinking about a Venn diagram. So imagine a daisy that has maybe 100 petals on it. And imagine that each of these petals is a different dimension, a different timeline, a different position within the multiverse, a different position within time and space. And imagine that they all join at the center. And at the center, there is like an interdimensional envelope. And that's where the big ship sits, so that many beings from many different realities can easily be transported through consciousness transfer to the big ship and have these life lessons and these learnings and different ways of helping us so that we can go back to our worlds and tell everybody about it and share and hopefully help elevate humanity. So that's where the big ship is located. It's in an interdimensional envelope. And there are many ways that we can go and join other beings. One way is through, quite literally, we could get picked up and transported, but I don't have any memory of that. So I'm not going to say things that I don't actually believe are true. I'm not going to embellish. I'm going to tell you the way I experienced it. And I don't have any memory of that. But I do remember that during the orientation process, I was there physically. And the only way I can think of that I was there physically was by what they call non-local duality or non-local transdimensional reality, consciousness transfer. I'm not sure. I don't know the science. I mean, I'm just somebody who had these experiences and I'm trying to share them with you. So I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, right? All I know is what happened. So I ended up going there and it felt very, very physical. We each one of us that I met the other newcomers, we went through a long kind of a tube that was about 8 or 9 feet high and about 20 feet long. We walked through it and a scan took place. It didn't just scan what we look like on the inside, it scanned what we looked on the outside. It scanned our genetics, it scanned our past life residue, it scanned trauma and residue from our emotional experiences while here on Earth. It took impression of everything and even more than that. Then I got introduced to a buddy. Everybody who finds themselves aboard the big ship is assigned a buddy. And this is someone who looks somewhat like us so that we would feel very comfortable with. And my buddy was a female being. She was very beautiful, much taller than myself. And everybody uses telepathy. Nobody uses voice or words. And so those of us from speaking worlds had to learn telepathy. It was very, very important. It was one of the first things that we were taught. And I get into great detail about how I was taught telepathy, what the lessons were like. and the 4 different levels until you reach mastery. And really, that's the first thing that has to happen. So the other thing I want to say is the big ship is alive and conscious itself. So these ships have to be conscious beings of themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to traverse interdimensional space. They need to be alive. Now, I don't know if they have a soul or what, but they have to be alive. And so their memory system or their database system is what we can tap into for training, education, orientation, all of that. Its ventilation system would be like its respiratory system. And that's what supplied all the elements we needed to sustain our life. Um, the food that we ate on board was what we would consider fruits and vegetables and berries, and it grows everywhere in every department. And there's a hydroponic system that we could think of a little bit like a circulatory system that would nurture and feed all of the plants on board. All of the beings were high frequency, highly evolved beings. All of them. They were beautiful, they were fit, they were friendly, they were peaceful. Of course, it's all telepathy. But even within telepathy, there are boundaries. Like, for instance, one of the hardest parts for me to master was to learn what they call shielding. And shielding is where we learn to keep our thoughts and feelings to ourselves. So you don't want to just blurt out, just like in our world, you wouldn't want people that just blurt everything out. It's annoying and it interrupts with the peace and the harmony of the community. Same thing on board the big ship. So we had to learn how to keep our thoughts and our imaginings and our emotions to ourselves. We had to learn how to share our thoughts and our impressions and our communication with only a few or to a whole group. And so that took some time in training. And when I first started out, I was issued a tablet and it just looked like a piece of plexiglass. It might have been crystal or glass. I don't know what it was made out of. And it has a telepathic interface. And so images and information that I needed would either appear flat on the screen or right above it as a holographic image. And it's all tied into the consciousness of the big ship. And telepathically, we could communicate through the tablet and then eventually through what I call the virtual reality system. And the virtual reality, see, we all have to learn all this stuff. We don't just show up there and know everything, right? There's stages to our learning. So the next stage of learning was the virtual reality. And it was just like a narrow headband. It went around the back of my head. It had 2 little buds that sat on my temples. And then I could interface with the big ship, and then I could have all kinds of training. That's where I learned the higher levels of telepathy. It was interesting after learning how to project and receive telepathically. There was an exercise we did where, and the other thing I want to say is when you're using the virtual reality, even though it's all within your mind's eye, you're experiencing it like a true lived experience. So in my mind's eye, it appeared as though I was in a room with a half a dozen other beings. And then I would try to keep my thoughts and my emotions contained. And every time it would leak out, they'd raise a hand and smile. And it was really quite funny and very frustrating because that was, like I said, the very hardest part for me. It took some time for me to learn how to keep things kind of quiet. But anyway, so as you can imagine, it's a very peaceful, very loving, but very industrious community aboard the big ship. And after I mastered telepathy and became very well oriented on the big ship, then I got into some training for the role that, or I guess the job that I wanted to train for was with botany. I was fascinated by all the plants and ways of combining them to get our nutritional needs met. I thought it was really interesting. And so I got to get into training. I got to go to different recreational events that we would consider to be sports or cultural events, all kinds of things. And eventually I trained into what I call the pre-settlement program. So that would be that involved scientific expeditions to other worlds where we would do an assessment because there are billions, beyond billions of worlds that would sustain life. And they've got water and atmosphere, they got plants, they got animals, they got everything, but there's no humanoids. Humanoids are placed onto these, what you could consider habitat worlds, only when they're ready and developed enough not to wreck it, but also they have to be, before they can be resettled, we have to understand the ecosystems and the biosphere and how they're interdependent and how they work together and how placing humanoids on those worlds would affect the beings like the plants and the animals and the whole biome as it exists, because that needs to be done in a very gentle way so that we're not disrupting systems. It has to be done in a harmonious and respectful manner. And so I got involved in some of these programs. And then I got to visit two worlds that were very, very different, completely different levels of technology. And I get into that in the book as well. And then I also talk about our everyday life from the time I woke up in the morning till the time I went back to bed, what that was like. And in a couple of places, I talk about what it was like to come back, to wake up and be back in my bed with my aches and pains and my life and my head full of everything I had been through. And then I wouldn't even have time to process that. And boom, it would be nighttime and I'd be back aboard the big ship. And I think that's why it only lasted for 3 months, because it was a lot. And my life was completely disrupted on a social and a personal and a spiritual level. Like at the time, it was traumatizing because I was trying to make sense of what I had been through. Am I crazy? What is going on here? Like it was unbelievable. And so I actually ceased contact with the outside world and I became a recluse because I needed to sort it out and I needed to make sense of what had happened. And then it actually took me a couple of years to unpack it. And then I wanted to tell everybody about it, but I had no way. How was I going to do this? I had no idea on how I was going to do this. And so eventually one thing led to another, and I ended up asking Chris Matthew from the Forbidden Knowledge Network, News Network, if I could be on his show, and he said yes. And then I was on his show, and eventually I got invited to an online conference, and then I met Preston Dennett. I don't know if you're familiar with Preston. He's written over 30 books. He's a well-known author and ET experiencer. And he said, Karen, can you send me a copy of your presentation? I said, sure. And I sent it to him in digital form. And he said, oh, you got to write a book. You've got to write a book. And it actually took me a number of years to write my book. And finally, I got it published last year. And then I just want to skip to the end. The last two chapters are about how we can recognize our own transdimensional experiences. And once we recognize that we are actually having these experiences, we can start to validate those experiences for ourselves and with each other. And that leads to more transdimensional experiences. So there are ways of listening so that you can realize that maybe some of these things that we're discounting and writing off as just overactive imagination, or maybe we're a little bit fearful because other people are not talking about these kind of experiences and ways that we can do that. And so that's sort of at the end of the book. So I don't know how long I've been talking, but I could go on forever. But I thought I would stop and let you folks ask me some questions because I'd love to answer them.
Yeah. We could use the react feature at the bottom of Zoom, the raise hand feature. If people want to raise their hand, we can ask Karen questions or comments. This is good. Who would like to go first? I mean, I could, but I like to be a polite host, let others others go first. But okay, we got a star, and you can have your camera on or off. It's up to you. You can unmute yourself, Star.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sorry, it takes a little time. I'm on the phone. I'm outside, so it would just be glare, so that's a better picture of me.
Okay.
Um, wow. Well, it's really interesting. I know I share with Brian, but my team told me because I didn't know what was going on when I see a spaceship, I get kind of freaked out. Like it just has bad vibes. And I'm like, that's not what I'm experiencing. That's not what I've gone through. Like I have shamanic experiences, the Mother Earth, and celestial beings and benevolent beings and nature spirits and I never had like a weird spaceship feeling. But my team finally said you're an what did they say? They said you're an interdimensional space traveler. And I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, okay, well, that's starting to make sense. That feels right." And I was going to ask you if you know, because like even while I'm listening to you, they said you're not in the solar system. They keep telling me I'm not in the solar system. And I have trouble with being abducted, and it's like I'm on some other space dimension and I'm trying to get back home. And I don't share that, you know, with anybody. I don't really know who to ask, I guess, but I was wondering if you have any thoughts. They say I'm not in the solar system, and I know I'm on a ship. I'm telepathic. I'm in training. I haven't mastered my emotions. They tell me I keep telling people stuff all the time, and it's not good. And I have to stay in my heart and not in my head. Um, So I know that, and they just keep saying you're in training. And when I go into public, I can hear everyone's subconscious thoughts.
Mhm.
I can talk to the dogs and the animals. But I hear it in different ways. But like if someone directly talks and speaks at me, like I hear them and I get a visual message. I feel their essence. I get like a picture, not like a square picture, but I get like where they are on the planet. So it's like I can hear them talking to me if I'm really tuned in at the time. Um, but if not, I get the feeling of their essence. I know they're talking to me.
Yeah, well, I have a few things I could say, and but again, you need to weigh out what I say and only accept the parts that ring true for you. But I wanted to say that people think of going into outer space as us leaving the planet like in a rocket ship or a flying saucer and traveling out
Yeah,
into the solar system. But the truth is, we can go anywhere from going within. So it's from going
totally.
within that we are able to access interdimensional travel, contact, everything is available. And it's
Mm-hmm.
our birthright as human beings. We all have the ability. And I want to speak a little bit about paranormal abilities. So people talk about lucid dreaming, people talk about astral traveling, people talk about remote viewing, all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of these paranormal things as though they're separate, but they're not. They're all part of the same phenomena. And it just depends on how you're perceiving it. And it's all
Mm-hmm.
very, very real and very exciting. And so, what I would always encourage people is to listen to your internal counsel, your spiritual guides. Even
Mm-hmm.
the planet itself can communicate
Mm-hmm.
with us. The more we open ourselves up to it and remain within the love harmonic. So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with um, is it Greg Braden, the guy that talks about the
Mm-hmm.
heart mind coherence? And he gives you a very simple exercise where you can just concentrate on your breathing and you make your exhalation a little bit longer than your inhalation. You put your hand over your heart that connects you with your intention to your heart. You do that breathing, and then you think about somebody or something that you love very much, and you start to feel emotion well up within you. Sometimes tears will come. And then you're approaching a high frequency state And that is the perfect way for us to go in and talk to our guides about what we want, what we need, what our questions are. And it'll be different from everybody. But, we're all kind of programmed to go to these external sources, to go to, and this is no disrespect if any of you are in the healing arts, but, we're taught to go to experts that are external to ourselves. But the truth is, the most powerful experts are within, and it's the going within. And it takes a tremendous amount of learning so that we can love ourselves, so that we can be on the love harmonic, that we can trust ourselves, trust our instincts, trust the messages we're getting, because they're there to help us and to heal us. And that's sort of what I wanted to say. I'm not sure if I answered all your questions or not.
Well, I was, I guess, sharing that I've had, similar experiences, and it's so nice to have someone honor and be able and know that it's out there, because like I was sharing that I'm just frustrated with so many groups or just in general movies, it's like I just see a spaceship and for some reason it just kind of freaks me out. But I
Mhm.
mean, they'll tell me where I'm at. I'm in Epsilon Eridani, or I'm here, or I'm there, or I'm in the inner earth, or so. I mean, they keep telling me where I am,
Mhm.
but I don't know why they say I'm not in the solar system. It's like I'm technically on the wrong planet.
Maybe
And
you are.
yeah, so somehow that's what I haven't figured out how to get home yet. Um,
Well, we can be in two places at the same time. That's the other thing. So you could
mhm,
quite well be in these places where they say you are, and
mhm,
you can also be here. But I don't think there's any mistakes. So I think your reason for being here perhaps is to tap into your other self and channel that out into this world to help people to understand that there's so much more. We get, I don't know about you guys, but I have to turn off the news because it can be
mhm,
really causes me to vibrate at the wrong, well, a very uncomfortable
right.
state, with all that's going on. Oh my goodness. There's
You
nothing,
haven't been
someone
listening.
earlier mentioned politics. We won't get into that, but in Canada, it's just nuts what's going on here. And I have to shut that off and tap back into myself, back into my spiritual resources, consider the things that were taught to me. And the extraterrestrial beings model our next stage of development. This group is not that far ahead of us. We can have what they have just by putting away the nonsense and all the negative stuff and the low vibration stuff and start treating ourselves with love. That's kind of the hardest part in the starting off point. And love isn't just warm affection, love is patience, self control, mildness. It's so many things. Faith, having faith in ourselves, knowing that we have our back no matter what happens. You're going to be there for you. These are really important things, and this is where it starts off. And then pretty soon you're vibrating at a whole new level, and you're having these different kinds of contact, whether it's your higher self, whether it's the planet, because the planet is also a very powerful integrated system and being in herself, whether it's ETs, it doesn't matter what you call them. We call them different things just so that I can like communicate to all of you, uh, sort of to get the gist of my experience. But I think there's a lot more commonality than what we think. So, and if you're afraid of every time you see a flying saucer or a so-called spaceship, and you're afraid, maybe you had an unpleasant abduction experience when you were a child. I don't have any memories of being abducted as a child, but I have a lot of missing time. And I definitely had that fear response at first, well, for quite a few years when I would see a spacecraft or the image of the grays. I just want to point out this image to the left of me here. The woman in the center represents myself. I had long white hair when I went through this experience. the woman on one side, she looks a lot like us, and the woman on the other side looks quite different. So there is huge diversity in what these beings look like. Some of them look very much like us. If you saw them walking down the street, you wouldn't even know. And others look quite different. And I think it's important that like it seems to me silly. We're squabbling over our skin tones here on Earth. Well, if you can't get over someone of a different skin tone here on Earth, what are you going to do when you meet humanoid, a highly intelligent, sensitive, compassionate being who looks quite different than us? Then you get the impression that we are all, the human race, we are all one race.
Yeah, your discussion reminds me of a quote from the Buddha. He said, through this one fathom length body, you can know the universe. So next we have Laura Harris. You're up next.
Learn the stunning details about ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living and expressing spirituality, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, meet the new neighbors, introduces you to many different ET beings, the healing pods, the interior of the big ship, my orientation process, cultural events, and off-world mating practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about the big ship, intergalactic and transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. Once I published my first book, I felt the need to create a second book called Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys Picture Book. I worked with AI to develop many images of beings that we have come to know of as the Greys. These beings come from many places, realms, dimensions, and timelines, and although they are of the same species as other humanoids, they are from many different family lines and races. What qualifies them as Greys is that their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in our visible range of the color spectrum, so to us, they all appear to be various shades of gray. Beyond this physical attribute, there is much diversity in their origins, cultures, purposes, and physiological details. My goal is to get you used to the looks of beings which are different than humans in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy these images and notice the things we have in common so you will see that although they are different from us in appearance, we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of both books are now available on Amazon worldwide. Search the Amazon and Kindle bookstores and pick up your copies today.
Hi, thank you. You were talking about getting those instructions. Do you talk about that in your book? And also, especially the telepathy. So I recognized telepathy at like 5, 6 years old. I had an encounter with a priest. So I always thought it was spiritual related. And I always had some very seeking practices. Like I've tried every religion, just about every religion, and it all boils down to certain laws of love, I call them. But that's for me. But having that understanding, and like lately, my whole community, I've had to be like channel abuse, because I've been in the government. So to me, it's the spiritual entities. Each one has their own, like a school spirit, government spirit, all of that. And it's connected in the telepathic field. So do you explain some of that, of techniques of how you can hone that and make that boundary you were talking about, to where you're not hearing them and they're not hearing you? Because that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Laura. Now I'm not sure 100% if I'm getting it right what you said, so please feel free to clarify. But there's different kinds of energies, and they all could be considered spiritual. But one thing that I have learned is that there is an entity called an egregore. So certain corporations If enough people believe in it, it becomes a spiritual being as well that's attached, called an egregore. Governments can be egregores, corporations can be egregores, religions can be egregores, and they actually create a type of spiritual energy. So the best way for us to connect with the best kind of energies that have our highest highest good at heart is to raise our own frequencies. So what happens is, as we raise our own frequencies, if you have a radio, I don't know if you guys remember the radios, but I guess some of you do, right? You could turn from one radio station to another. And some radio stations, if you were a little bit off, it would be all kind of scratchy sounding and irritating. And you keep turning and you get to the next channel and you tune it till it comes in clear. Well, those are different frequencies. Those are actual frequencies, each one of those radio stations. So each one of us is like a radio station. And when we tune our frequencies higher and higher, those other frequencies, it's like they don't even exist. Another example of that is us as human beings. We have very limited senses. The different amounts of color that we can see from the color spectrum or the light spectrum is it's such a narrow, tiny little band compared to what's visible to other beings or that's actually out there. The same thing with our hearing. Only these tiny little bandwidth of range of hearing. The same thing with what we sense as touch, which is the electromagnetic spectrum. Very narrow. So there's a whole lot going on around us, but we're not necessarily aware of it. And so now we want to start raising our frequency and tuning in to the higher vibrational frequencies. And these are the places where you're met with nothing but love and goodness. And the other demonic forces or egregores that don't have your best interest at heart, they're just tuned out. It's like they don't exist anymore. They don't affect you. It's like you wouldn't even know they were there. And so you get to focus on what brings you joy, what brings you peace, what brings you the contentment and the goodness that you want in your life. And I think we all want that. And I think it's absolutely attainable to each and every one of us. But it takes a little bit of work. I'm still working on it. Boy, I tell you, I've been working on patience for a long time. Patience for myself and patience for other people. That's one of the hardest. I've pretty well mastered self-control. I had to change what I ate, getting enough exercise, getting enough sunshine, people that I don't want to be around anymore because they don't bring any light or love into my world. All those things. I got that mastered, but patience, wow, that's a hard one. And I'm working hard on that, but I get better at it. It's like strengthening a muscle. You get better at it, you get better at it, and you get better at it. And, I can think of no other greater gift than to become the change that I want to see in the world and to be a good role model for my grown children and for my neighbors and for my friends. And then when it's time for me to pass from this life, I can go with a certain contentment and peace because I really can look back on my life and go, oh my gosh, I came so far. I'm not all there, but I've come so far. I don't know, Laura, did I get off on a tangent or did I answer your question?
Pretty much you answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, you can follow up if you want, Laura, if you want to ask anything else.
How did you learn to cope with like the thing? So like I belong to another group. A guy was talking about entrails. And for some reason, I'm sitting outside and there's an entrail starting, and it started as a degree. And I thought, oh, that looks like a projector kind of degree angle. So I looked it up on a projector and it was my age group. I'm in 64. So it was right around that degree, right, of angle.
Mm.
And I was texting with my nephew and the letter T, and then my sister, his mother, a V. And then he said it looked like an L coming through the two of those. And I was like, that's really weird because I'm a little conflictual with my sister. You know, we're not, she doesn't like me. I'm the baby and she never liked the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there was a net at the end of it, like, squared net. And I'm like, well, we're all in this together, whether we like it or not, was the message
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to explain that symbolism to people that you get, or, and it just, I guess it's just for you at the time then. How do you adjust your own self in being okay with just your own knowledge you're given without feeling crazy?
Well, again, it gets back into self-love. Now, there are many ways that the forces communicate with us. The other thing, too, is if any of you have done any research into simulation theory, yes, everything we do on this life in this world has real life repercussions, but it's much more flexible than people could ever imagine. And the eye of the observer is what collapses the unified field into a specific way of being. And that's why each one of us in this group today would see things a little bit differently. We all see them through our own perceptual arena, and we're all collapsing the waveforms into what we're seeing. And there's a whole science behind this. I could get into the double slit experiment. I highly recommend you do some research on that if you want. But because of that, we would get messages. That's another way that our higher self, or perhaps our subconscious, or even perhaps a deceased loved one can communicate with us, is by noticing these patterns. And I think that it's great to pay attention to them. And you know what? To be honest with you, if the more you get real with yourself and learn to love and trust yourself and be open to transdimensional experiences, the more you're going to get labeled as either evil or crazy. And so I'm just at the point, I'm 69 years old, and I just go, okay, sign me up. I'm evil and I'm crazy, whatever, whatever, you
I've
know.
got both those labels too.
Well, and it seems to come with the territory, I have to be honest.
Oh, okay. So next is Astera's partners on. Are you there? You
I'm
can
muted.
unmute. There we go.
Yes. Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Hi, I'm David. I was just I at the very beginning they're talking about the spaceship, and I've been on one behind Jupiter, which was about 3,500 miles across and 500 miles tall. It belonged to the Andromedans, but it had like at least maybe 70 different races with
Yeah.
colonies on this one ship, millions upon millions of people, and I'm just like, and they even had sections where there's one section where they had 12th to 10th dimensional Andromedans, which were like Elohim souls. Then they had Andromedans, which had like Andromedan souls. They had humans who were in Andromedan bodies that were brand new. I mean, they had like sections upon sections, dimensions upon dimensions, and all of it segmented on the ship. And being multidimensional is just like, for everyone else, is just, an everyday thing. It's nothing
Mhm.
special. But for us, we've been in such a low frequency. To be in these higher frequencies is just phenomenal. I don't know if Astara told you, but where we live, we have a Syrian Stargate that goes to Sirius B over our land. And a few days ago, we had in a multidimensional realms, we had an Orion ship and a Pleiadian ship and a Syrian ship fighting over this one portal, and they were able to get rid of the lower frequencies. But it's like, if you're not sensitive to those things, you don't know why you're angry or why you're feeling like all of these like lower vibrations. And they actually shoot these beams from these UFOs that try and control the emotions of the person of the other ship to get them to make a mistake. And it's kind of like, I mean, we're just scratching the surface consciously of this. And I do remember when I was on that ship out of body that the apparently there's like 800,000 Andromedans on Earth right now, of which only 22,000 are Elohim souls. So, and they said when I was on the ship that Pleiadians, Syrians, Arcturians, all the main races have a section for just Elohim souls because they're part of their communities. They're part of determining the spirituality and the politics of each sector, which they're in charge of. And they said that their ship was built between the Andromedans and the Arcturians. They use both their technologies to create these like super large ships, and they build them multidimensionally with consciousness, which we all have been talking about right now. And so right now we're just looking at from what you're saying, how to, once you get up to like, let's say a 6 dimensional frequency. I've had like maybe 15 abductions, but it was positive. And when I was 13, I had like I think it was a Syrian ship. It was a golden triangle and a red triangle going back and forth like a Merkaba, which I saw. Um, Basically, I was being lowered by the ship, and they passed me through the boards and through the stuff in the ceiling, and I was seeing the atoms in the boards as I was passing through them, and I was get all the way down to my bed, and it dropped me about 3 feet above my bed, and I bounced, and I looked at the wall, and I could still see the red triangle and the golden triangle, and I said, "Was that real?" And I opened my window and I looked out from the second story of my house, and I look up, and it's above my house for about 30 seconds, and then it just shakes and then disappears. But I've had those things, and loss of time throughout my life. I think we've all lost time and not known what's going on. I mean, even driving from Miami to Gainesville, Florida, I ended up on the other side of Georgia, and I never fell asleep, and I don't know how I got there.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely we're part of a group which are going to be the leaders once the vibration of Earth gets to a certain point. Today is only a C 1.8, I think, which isn't bad. But the last few days we've had M class flares, X class flares,
Mhm.
and the gamma radiation and photonic light is definitely turning on our junk DNA and making us more crystalline. That's just all I wanted to share is how all of this is connected, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely does. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. You're welcome.
Okay, and Taylor's got his hand up. Did you want your camera on or off is fine?
Yeah, hi. Great stories. Yeah, I'm not sure if I've experienced a lot of that stuff, but I mean, I think it's really cool that that there's other things outside of ourselves. And I could understand like this society norms. They'd be like, "What do you mean? That's like you're hallucinating. Like that can't be real." Um, and yeah, and I'm going through some different things. Just bouts of like depression and loneliness and thinking like what's the meaning of any of this, and I'm just like I'm just like if I don't go and talk to people, I'll like start getting like like I'm falling out of the world. Like I'm just like I'll start thinking those thoughts like I don't belong here, like what am I doing here? This is pointless. Um and I don't really feel like there's anything out there. But then I like wonder in those moments when, because I'll like I'll reach out to people or I'll text to people or I'll go for a walk or I'll get outside. But I wonder if I just like um continue to suffer if like I'll if like I'll get helped by outside forces, right? Whatever those are, because I don't really. I've had some experiences with nothing too in detail that I remember, but it's good to know that, those forces and have that conception that they're gonna help me versus hurt me. Like they don't want me to just, you know, um continue to suffer. They're like they have the idea of helping me somehow. And so yeah, I just wanted to share that because, when I stepped into this group, I didn't really know what type of group this was because I'm wanting to do more of the meditating. I have a therapist I talk to, and um I want to get more into meditation and kind of um changing my thought process of like that negative constant repeat of negative thoughts or um and like sometimes I'll have to get out of the house and I'll just go to coffee shops or whatever and just read while I'm people watching just to be around people so I don't feel like so lonely because I just don't think that I don't know for me I don't have family that I live with and I mean I don't have a lot of so like I'm by myself a lot and I just don't think that that's healthy and I don't think that that's supposed to be like that. I don't think that humans were like we're made to be around other human beings. Like that's when we really shine. And I know that's when I shine too. It's just like forcing myself like go hang out with humans, bro. Like go out there and talk to people. And it's just really hard to strike up conversations with people and like it's just it's so I'm trying to figure out like the wisdom part of like I want to get better at that. And you also have to there's society standards and stuff like that. And, it's just all these rules that kind of keep us from being authentic and open and honest about like what's really going on and like what we're really thinking. And so that's kind of what I wanted to share, but I appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, I just wanted to say this may or may not be relevant for you, but what you may want to try, and at first I used to feel foolish doing it, and then I just got used to it, and that is just speaking out loud within the room. I wouldn't do this in the supermarket or anything like that, but when I'm alone at home, and just speaking out loud to the room and calling to my guides and saying, I know I've got a higher purpose. What is it? What is my higher purpose? Reveal it to me. I need to know. And then I had to learn to listen what I call peripherally. So I'm going to use an analogy. When you're looking at the screen, you're only aware of the screen in front of you. But if you want to, you can look out the sides of your eyes to your peripheral vision and you can actually see the walls on either side of you. Well, that's a metaphor for how you want to start listening internally. So when you go into a meditative state or a relaxed state, then allow yourself to be open to messages, symbols, overlays, images, little short visuals that come into your imagination. Allow that to come in and bubble forth. And pretty soon you might be getting some direction because I'll tell you, one thing that really cured loneliness for me was having a mission, having something that got me fired up. And I was, yes, that's what I'm going to do. And I don't care what other people think, and I guess that's something that comes with old age. You stop worrying about what people think. But you know what? You can never make everyone happy. The social norms are constructed in such a way to make it impossible to win. And if it isn't that, you're not old enough, or you're not young enough, or you're not beautiful enough, or you're not muscular enough, or you're not rich enough, or you're not religious enough. So you can't jump through those hoops. And when you get to the point where you don't care what other people think, you're going to march to the beat of your own drum. And when you start to vocally ask out loud, can you help me? I need help. And then listen on the inside. And it's really can be quite a beautiful thing. And so I'm actually really excited for you because you're in that liminal state of that comes before profound self-discovery. And yeah, it's icky, but it's awesome.
Good answer, Karen. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, I had some questions. First one, in the beginning of your talk, you talked about the new world coming. Can you describe what do you think is the process of that, and what would the new world look like after it happens? What would that be like?
I don't know. I've seen several different timeline possibilities, Brian, but I can't tell you this is definitely how it's going to be. That all depends on us. So I have seen scenarios where there's actually a splitting off, and it's almost like a new earth is created, and the old earth just gets worse and worse. And depending on our resonant frequency and the work that we've done, which includes shadow work, we can split off, and then the other world just kind of disappears and we don't think about it anymore, you know. And one day we realize, oh my gosh, when did the world get so wonderful? I think it's already started, actually. So that's one scenario. Another scenario is we just take back our own personal power and our own sovereignty. And I think that's infectious. And I think that that's why we need to become the change that we want to see in the world. We start by changing ourselves, and it's not easy and it's hard work and it's shadow work. Nobody wants to do shadow work, just like nobody wants to, change their eating habits, right? It's like, it's work. It's absolutely work, but eventually it pays forward. And we end up eventually being in this place where like I've been working on it for a long time. I'm not all there yet, but I've been working on it for a long time, really every day, diligently working at it. And I look back over 5 years ago and I'm absolutely delighted with my progress. So that's another way that we could change the world. I think the other way that we could change the world, I talked a little bit earlier about simulation theory. And so what happens is these powers that be that we don't appreciate, let me just put it into that kind of language, the powers that be that we don't personally appreciate, they can only be in power when we give it to them. We can stop giving them our power and we can give ourselves the power. And then it's a little bit like, Dorothy in the Yellow Brick Road, and Toto pulls back the curtain and you see that there's just this guy pulling all these wheels and levers, and there's no such thing as the wizard. And so, or you could look at the story of the emperor has no clothes, right? We can pull back our power, put it into the things that really matter to us. And that takes some self discipline and some practice, right? And then they lose their power because they got nothing. I mean, we're the ones with the creativity. We're the ones that have the love and the compassion. And we're the ones that have it. And there's so many of us. And I think it's infectious. And so I think in that way, we could take the world we're living in right now and we could change it quite dramatically. And I think tied in there somewhere is the disclosure about ETs and the 0 point technologies so that we can all have more than enough energy to cook our food and heat our homes, and we're not having to argue over oil and gas. That would be moot point, right? And then maybe we can get into anti-gravity. Oh my God, can you imagine if we just had 0 point energy and anti-gravity? Do you know how much room there is on this planet? We could live up north, like a lot of Canada, you can't live in. It's just too damn cold. But you could suddenly have these amazing habitats. Maybe they'd be dome cities that in the wintertime we're protected, and maybe in the summertime the domes recede and we're out in the fresh air again. Like, I don't know. We could live under the sea. We could live on top of the sea. We can live up in the air. There's so many possibilities that will open up once we open up in our thinking and in our hearts and in our consciousness. Sorry, I get off on a roll. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it's good. My other question is about, I think you mentioned there could be ETs living on Earth, like David Jacobs. I've read his book. He describes what he calls hybrids, which are fully human-looking hybrids, and he thinks they're actually living on the Earth among us, that have their own apartments and somehow they're fitting in. I don't know how, he doesn't explain how they manage to get their ID and stuff, but do you think there's hybrids like living among us here on Earth?
Think there's lots of beings that live on Earth. I think that a lot of the whole cryptid phenomenon could overlap with the ET phenomenon, but there's also crypto-terrestrials. So there have been remote viewers that have seen deep within the ocean or under mountain ranges, there are these technological communities of so-called extraterrestrials. I think extraterrestrials can live among us and we would never even know. I think when you get energy sensitive, you start to pick up on it. I think there's a whole lot going on. But again, what we give our attention to, we feed. And what we don't withdraw our attention from, we starve. I mean, that's just an energetic analogy. So, there might be all kinds of negative forces. I've heard horror stories about what's in South um, what do you call it, Antarctica and all this other stuff, you know. And I can be afraid, or I can say, nope, damn it, I'm going to live in the love vibration, and I'm going to draw loving beings to me and loving people to me, and I'm going to love myself, and I'm going to love my cats, and I'm going to, you know, not be trying to be overly involved in my grown children's lives and let them learn and make mistakes and love them anyway. And, you know, like there's so much we can do on a personal level. So I'm going to keep bringing it back to the personal level. And then the whole bunch of us start to do that. And then we're living very much like the beings on the big ship.
Okay, yeah. Next, Astara's partner, he's got his hand up. Come on.
Thank you. Yeah, multi dimensions and what you're talking about. You know, my uncle was in charge of Area 51 for 7.5 years, so I've gone through this since I was like 19 years old and heard about. I mean, since the 70s, he said we were trading with four. See, double that. Okay, 926 different ET species. And he said that on Earth, there's about 12 or 13 different species that took human incarnations, Andromedans, Sirians, Pleiadians. And then there's, like you said, hybrid bodies. I'm half Nez Perce Indian, and I used to work at a blood bank, and my genetics are basically 20% unknown. And when I really tuned into my higher self and these other beings, I do have some like a direct descendant of the Zeus bloodline. And I also had Syrian blood. Apparently, the Nez Perce Indians mated with these different beings about 2,000 years ago. So I have small traces in my blood right now. And for the fourth dimension, I can tell you that it's like the Jetsons. People aren't quite as evolved, but they have flying cars, replicators, med beds, all that. Once we make that crossover, the first, second, and third dimension is one universe. But when we cross to fourth, fifth, and sixth, those three are also a different universe, which we're going to at a higher harmonic. And there are human souls, there are angelic Elohim souls, and ET souls all over Earth right now, trying to raise her up. And we're all put in positions and locations where our energies and codes can do the most good. I just want, and like 5D is like your thoughts become reality over a little bit of time. It's like jungles and waterfalls. It's beautiful. It's crystalline cities, you know, and then you get to the 6D, which everything is made up of sacred geometry, colors you can't even imagine. And whatever you imagine in 6D, when you forget about it, it lowers down and manifests in 5D and then 4D. So if you create a leaf or a tree in 6D, it will trickle down, and it's like a fractal. Once it hits the 4D or the 3D, it replicates. So you get thousands of trees, and you invent a plant in 6D. You get billions of plants all over the planet, which match that frequency and that fractal. And it's a constantly going experience. And we're all connected to source, using that source energy to be creative, to create new forms of life, animals, everything that we experience in this universe, fourth, fifth, and sixth, comes from the sixth dimension. And depending on your DNA and your vibration, and if you're joyful and you're focused on your higher heart and love, you can go to the fifth or sixth dimension, where you get superpowers, levitation, creating portals with your mind. Sixth dimensional beings not only can go to anywhere in the universe with their consciousness, but they can actually go up and down in dimensions wherever they go, and they can go forward and backwards in time where they go. And in the fifth dimension, you can do it on Earth and our solar system and galaxy, but you don't really jump universes from that level of vibration. But we have a lot to look forward to. Even if you only make it to the fourth, you have the potential of your DNA, because of all the mixing of ET DNAs within us, over 100 races we have inside our bodies. We could eventually take that fourth dimensional body, be spiritual, and end up in the 12th dimension in less than 2 million years, which seems like a long time, but it really isn't. When you look at the whole multiverse and everything that exists is 976 to 980 billion years old. So, and this is like the seventh super universe of 7 sections that we're in right now. And we're in an open-ended universe, which means everyone here that exists, that's conscious, is eternal. And for depression and everything else, it's about, okay, if you feel depression and you put the light of consciousness on where you feel it inside your body, that depression feeling starts to dissolve until you find inner peace. And then whatever thought that created it, once you get rid of the energy, the thought also gets dissipated. So if you're depressed, you might want to use that technique just to get to the higher vibrational level. I was hoping that might help a little bit for people understanding, because right now we're in the third, fourth kind of wavering. But once we're locked into the fourth completely, that split will happen. And yeah, we're going to have a totally new planet, new continents, new buildings, because everything from the past, present, and future that are in those dimensions, since everything happens simultaneously, are going to manifest, which means we're going to see Lemuria again, Atlantis again, and all of these underground civilizations that came and gone. All of that is going to be merged into our positive time stream. And then the negative one is going to be AI, robots, Borgs for about 1,000 years. And then after that, the timelines will remerge, we'll clear out the AI, and then the whole universe will be an organic ascension universe from that point forward. Because the last super universe in the 11th creation is where all of this AI and negativity came from. And they figured out using technology how to create a wormhole into our universe. And now we're having to deal with it. And that's where the billions of years of the galactic wars with the Anunnaki, the Orions, and other reptilian and insectoid species were trying to, be more of a physical takeover instead of a spiritual. And they have to feed on our energies because they can't connect to source and God themselves. So we are very special, and you raise your frequency a little bit, they cannot harm you, they cannot control you, they can put thoughts in your head, but if you raise up a little bit in frequency, they can't do that either. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this helps a few of you. And does anyone have a question? Or
Karen, do you want to comment on that at all?
What I wanted to say is I believe there are some grays that are like robots or artificial life forms, but in the absolute majority, extraterrestrials, they follow the same kind of template as us. There's universal consciousness, and there's certain ways of being that are advantageous to us, that help us, and there are ways of beings that don't. But everything answers to these universal principles or laws. And so I think that ultimately, again, going within, taking good care of ourselves, learning how to be on the love harmonic, it does nothing but good. Not just physically in the 3D, but on the higher planes, on the interdimensional planes, transdimensional, the whole thing can heal and is a natural, organic reality. And all we have to do is just raise ourselves above and just tap out of, like the screen time. I have the challenge with spending too much time sometimes in screen time, but then I also live where it's super cold 6 months out of the year. But as soon as the sun comes out, I'm out and I'm reconnecting with this beautiful planet. And it's all about frequencies, whether it's ET, whether it's spiritual guides, whether it's ghosts, doesn't matter. It's all frequency related, and we can have nothing but good by tapping into that. That's what I hope to reach people with my book, is to help kind of let them reset their focus on what really matters and let them see that there are all kinds of possibilities you're not going to get told about, hanging around at the coffee shop or from the government or from any of these institutions. Because what happens is when we start to recognize that power and the power within, wow, we're unstoppable. And it's going to be, I'm very optimistic. I'm very, very, like David, I'm very optimistic on what's coming, what's happening. It's amazing. And my life has changed so much. And like I said at the very beginning of this, I had a lot of trauma and a lot of suffering, and I had a long way to come to get to where I'm at now, but it's so precious. And I want to let everybody know this is possible for all of us. Not, I'm no special kind of person, believe me. I'm no saint,
That
you know?
that is so true. And with the solar flares increasing until April 24th, and then they're supposed to be going down. But if we shift into this next paradigm, we may not have the same pattern of high solar flares at this time. It might keep increasing the solar flares until we get a solar flash. All of this is it's the most exciting time to be on Earth right now. And I mean, living on our land, the second day we moved onto this land, we saw a tall white ran in front of our airstream. It's 9 foot tall, and the military was chasing it across our land, which was kind of funny. And then a couple weeks later, I was had a fire in the backyard, and I had a tall white get about 50 feet from the fire. He smiled at me, nodded, and just took off running like 90 miles per hour. And when you see stuff like that, and you have an uncle who talks about, ETs, UFOs, different types of technologies, you kind of just accept whatever happens in the moment and you don't question it. And we're all going to be having these experiences because before 2033, we have to ascend to that next vibrational level. So the better you take care of your body, mind, and spirit and stay in the upper heart, the easier your transition is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we still haven't heard from Christina or Harry or Eric. If you want to have any questions or comments. How about Christina? Do you want to join us?
Hi. Yeah, thanks. I'm Christina. Wow, lots and lots of good information. Um, I don't really have any questions. I also am just beginning to write a book on my experiences. So I'm really here just to learn more. And I'm super grateful that I've connected with numerous Astera Rose's partner, a lot there, a lot of good stuff. And of course our Karen, a lot of good stuff. I do have one question, and I don't know if this fits into anything, but has anyone had any experiences with having maybe being taken or just so much energy that they've ended up with seizures? Maybe not knowing how to deal with it. It's kind of a personal question, but it's a question that I have. And I was wondering if anyone has dealt with that or known anybody, or is that even possible? The energy just being too much for them, or
The only thing I know about any of that is frequency music. Some frequency music can cause seizures. So maybe entering into that frequency some way is doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, that is what someone told me a little bit ago, that has to do with the seizures and you need to go into music. I have that all written down from a different lady that I spoke with. So thank you for that. That's just confirmation. I love it. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have right now, but I will be back.
Oh,
Thank-
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, Karen, I want to ask you if you've ever seen any mantids aboard the crafts you've been on.
I just want to make one more comment. So you
Oh,
have
yeah,
to be
sure.
careful.
Go ahead.
You have to be careful with those frequencies because they can cause the seizures. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Good warning.
No, not that I'm aware of. Most of the beings that I met looked very much like us, very, very much like us. And, my experiences are a little different than a lot of other people. These are not necessarily beings that come to Earth. Like, there's all kinds of extraterrestrials that come to Earth that all kinds of people talk about, from the Pleiades or mantids, or, I mean, even the Greys, if you take them as one group, there's probably thousands and thousands. Like, we can't even imagine how big the galaxy is, never mind all of the universe and all the transdimensional spaces and dimensions. Like, it's mind-boggling. And so that's why I think there's room for everybody. But no, my experiences are not contained to all the what people are reporting, being abducted and on a big ship and they see a mantis, or some people through psychedelics. I didn't use psychedelics to have my experiences, but some people with psychedelics, they interrelate with mantids and stuff. But and Jeff Silvers, he's had some experience with the mantids, but no, I haven't had any experience with them. All the beings that I met look very much like us, and like the image over there that shows about the two extremes and all kinds in between.
Okay, but did the ETs ever talk to you about the idea of a human ET hybrid program, that Homo sapiens sapiens is being hybridized and changed for this new future coming up?
No, I don't have any experience with that either. These beings all have procreate the old-fashioned way. Chapter 9 is about love, and sex and reproduction. I get into that in chapter 9. And they also don't have our stereotypes. They don't have concepts of racism. They don't have concepts of gender. They just know that the female chromosomes give them the ability to conceive with child, and the male chromosomes give them the ability to impregnate a female. And so that is how families are done. It sounds very old-fashioned, but that's just how families are formed. Then there's all kinds of beings who do not want to procreate, that have what we would consider pansexual or gay or lesbian. Like, nobody thinks anything of it. It's not categorized and talked about. People just are the way they are. But no, they have babies the old-fashioned way, with a mom and a dad, and they produce offspring that way. I didn't see anything close to hybrid program, and I don't know anything really about that.
Yeah, like ETs tend not to talk about it, not to tell people. Like if they're taking sperm and egg, they don't say what it's for. But some people have found out a bit of it. So yeah, that's what I was just curious to know. Yeah.
I can put in 2 cents there. Yeah, the hybrid system, which you're talking about, started in the late 60s, early 70s in Area 51, using gray and human DNA to create the hybrids, which in the future becomes the Essassani race, which is like Bashar and other channeled beings from that advanced positive gray area. But a lot of the hybrids that are on Earth are basically not done by ETs. They're actually done by our government to create hybrid super soldiers and beings that can serve them. But that's all changing now. It's just like they're looking at just trying to activate junk DNA for everyone. And so everyone starts to have natural super abilities and life becomes so much easier. But those programs, they didn't shut them down until I think 2012 or 13. And there's still other programs going on with the Greys, but not with the U.S. military anymore. What you call the white hats shut that down. And I can tell you the negative ETs that were in our solar system, and those have been, they said 98.2% of those beings have been removed. And there's only a few pockets of underground resistance that they're clearing out here on the moon and on Mars. And one moon in Jupiter. But once those are cleared out completely, we're not going to have any manipulation, and we can evolve naturally without interference, which is, I think, what we're all looking for, is an easier way of ascending.
I also have another book that I recently published called Transdimensional 2 Meet the Greys Picture Book. And in it, I have the first 2 chapters. It is written by 8 people who have had ongoing experiences with the Greys. But most of this book is actually a picture book. And I have all kinds of, they're AI generated, they're not photographs, but of all kinds of similar to what the hybrid children would look like. It has everything: males, females, human-looking Greys. There are thousands and thousands of different family races of Greys. What they all have in common is their skin does not contain the pigment necessary to reflect light in the color spectrum as our eyes see it. So to us, they all appear to be gray or almost colorless or cream colored or white. But it's not that they don't have color, it's that the pigment doesn't reflect light in our visible spectrum of the color spectrum. But again, every time you want to talk about ETs, there's no way we can generalize. There's thousands of different races and family lines and subcultures and ways of doing things. But the thing that we do all have in common is this whole concept of universal consciousness, raising our frequency, treating each other well, living in peaceful communities. Let's face it, once we get into all of that, there is no limit to our technological advances, our spiritual advances. We ourselves are technology. We have the ability to fold space and time and to go into all these other dimensional realities, like I think it's David was saying, like we are technology, and it's going to be amazing. I can't wait.
Yeah, we were going to go about an hour and a half. I guess that's time. Christina, did you have any other question or comments? Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Well, did you want to wrap up, Karen, or go any more?
Well, I'd like to say that if anyone, if you know of anyone who would like to know more about my journey and my contact with ET, there's Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors is available on Kindle and paperback, and I'm saving up to have it done on Audible. And I also have 2 podcasts, The Quantum Guide Show, which is every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time or 3 p.m. Eastern, or I guess that would be 12 noon Pacific. And I interview people who are making a positive contribution to the world every Wednesday. And on Sundays, I do the Aliens and Angels podcast every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific, noon Mountain Time, or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm either discussing my book or I have guests on who have had real extraterrestrial contact. So I don't have researchers on that show. I have people who have actually had contact. You can always go back and watch the replays. And of course, I have a website available, but I'm sure Brian's going to put the links in the description below. So yeah, so that's where y'all can find me. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been a really interesting conversation. And I love the contributions from everybody.
Thank you so much. Brian, are you gonna send us everything?
Yeah, I'll put the links below the video, and this will be posted on our channel. We have our University Galactus channel, so it'll all be there. Yeah. Okay. So thank you kindly, Karen. It's good discussion. Good. There's about 10 of us on the Zoom. A lot of Americans, people from all over. So thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
Very well.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.